Welcome to Beyond AccorInvest, the podcast where we tackle business, societal, and environmental challenges in the hospitality and real estate industries. And once again, I'm very pleased to host this podcast brought to you by AccorInvest, Europe's leading hotel owner and operator.
How do you envision your future? Our world is evolving fast, and all industries face common challenges. Hospitality is no exception. What about you? Do you simply dream of a better world, or do you dare to be the change? Welcome to Beyond AccorInvest, the podcast where we talk about our business of today, tomorrow, and beyond.
And the topic of today's podcast is ESG, box ticking or essential to business. And we have two guests at the table. Ufi Ibrahim, so nice to have you.
Thank you.
Ufi, you're the founder and CEO of Energy and Environment Alliance, the EEA, which is a global coalition of hospitality and lodging investors, developers, operators, asset managers, all working together tirelessly to transition hospitality businesses to net zero carbon through ESG leadership, correct?
Correct, but in a commercially sustainable and scientifically robust way, which we can talk about later.
Which is very important, and we will be talking about this with Ufi Ibrahim. Our second guest is Frank Bermond, VP Design and Construction at AccorInvest. Very nice to have you too.
Nice to be here.
Frank, you have an engineering degree, I believe.
Yes, absolutely.
Many
French
years.
school.
From a very good French school. Many years, over 30 years of professional experience. And also you're responsible, and that's very important for our discussion, for driving the group's ESG strategy.
Exactly.
Right. So we like to start these episodes at Beyond AccorInvest with a quote. And I propose to you the following quote. Doing good can help improve your prospects, your profits, and your business. And it can change the world. We must change the way we do business. Now, who said it? I'll let you guess. Is it a politician, an NGO leader, a famous actress at the Academy Awards, or maybe a billionaire executive? Who could have said something like this?
Well, I think I know.
Oh, you know. Well, then, Frank, you go ahead and answer.
I think it's Richard Branson.
How do you know that?
Because I know. Because I used it in one of my presentations.
So yes, the man behind the Virgin brand. Yes, he wrote that in the Screw Business as Usual book. And his whole idea was that we need to transform business into a force for good, and that things can coexist, that the dual benefits of responsible business practices are possible. So 1 point for you, Frank. Ufi,
well done, Frank.
I'm sure we will have other opportunities. Because the questions around ESG and this force for good, they persist, they exist. And actually one of the sources of all this questioning comes from the study that you, Ufi, at the EEA did with the King's College London. Last year you did a very serious study with 200 hospitality leaders from around the world, where you collected their insights about the mindset of ESG and how they perceive it. And really what stands out from this report is that ESG creates a lot of debate, skepticism, and maybe even confusion, because we find things like ESG is perceived at the same time as the topic of compliance and regulation and qualified opportunity and greenwashing, or both a cost and a source of value creation, or both measurable and lacking definition. So what creates this confusion? What is ESG?
It's a lack of knowledge. If you have a lack of knowledge and you have a lack of information, it's very easy to get confused, and you can be overwhelmed because at the moment there's so much noise. So the question is, how do you cut through the noise to be able to distill and get some clarity? And that's what we're seeing in the minds of leaders. Do we go this way? Do we go that way? The noise is drawing us this way. And then there's this whole change in ESG, this thing that used to be called ESG 1.0, which was around corporate responsibility. But now we're moving into a world where it's becoming financial, and it's becoming a sort of assessment about the value of your business. That's the direction of travel. And this is causing a little bit of confusion. And we're seeing that reflected in the minds of top chief executives around the world.
Is the fact that there are so many different acronyms also adding to the confusion? Because we see ESG, we see CSR, we see NFRD, CSRD. Is it helping, or what is the difference between all these different terms?
From my perspective, I think it's a bit of an excuse to say there's a lot of acronyms. There are, but there are acronyms in business anyway. We operate with EBITDAs, we operate with ROIs, we operate, in our industry, we operate with RevPARs, GOPARs, ADRs, all sorts of acronyms. So my own view is that it's a bit of a misnomer. in terms of saying the acronyms are really confusing. I think probably not.
Well, I would tend to disagree a little bit. I think they create confusion. I think it's a little bit like an alphabet soup. You have all these letters. Let's take one example, CSR, CSRD. There's one letter difference, but it's nothing to do with it. CSR is more or less the old name we used in not so far ago, maybe 5 years ago, to describe sustainability. And CSRD is a reporting framework. Okay, they're linked to sustainability, but they're not comparable. And the difference is only one tiny letter. But more important than the acronyms, I think what is important is the concept that you put behind. You will always have acronyms that direct you to a reporting thing or whatever. But I think that if we use one word rather than an acronym, because an acronym you always find, it's like the seven dwarves, you always miss one. Is the R responsible? Is the R reporting? So you never know, particularly if you're not in that business. If there is one key word for me, it's sustainability or sustainable, because you can use it. You can have a sustainable policy. You can have sustainability KPIs. You can have a sustainability reporting, sustainable strategy. And it's easier to explain and to understand.
So terminology is maybe helpful to kind of have some kind of cohesive understanding and collective approach. How is the EEA helping to make this collective approach more efficient and help bring the knowledge to people?
Well, I think twofold. One is to ensure that people realize the difference is going to be made by individuals. If you are a business person and you are in business, just as Richard Branson said, you have the possibility of doing good, to be the force for change. But to do that, you need to have some information and education. So we invested in developing executive education for the industry. Mm-hmm. The second thing that we're doing is we're trying to create some harmonization so that investors in our industry, asset managers, operators can actually compare what good looks like. At the moment in our industry, we don't really know what good actually looks like for a particular type of hotel, for example. We don't really know that information. We kind of have an idea. Some leaders in the industry say, well, for our own assets, we know that, but they cannot compare across the board. And that's affecting their ability to be able to invest and get returns from the market on their investment because the market can't compare. I could say that I'm doing well, and green certifications can help me look as if I'm doing well, but ultimately, if we don't have that comparability, we can't. And that's where our coalition is working to actually work with institutions, regulators, to try and harmonize those standards so that we can get reliable, audit-grade data that's comparable and good use for investment decisions.
Very, very interesting. Another thing that comes out of the report from the EEA with King's College London is also a kind of a wide agreement among all these industry leaders across the world that it's no longer sustainable to do business as usual, right? So in the same terms that we just saw in the quote, there seems to be essentially a need for different practices, different standards, right? Different methods and processes. And these new things, different things should be called, maybe or are the business as unusual. And that should become the new standard. So maybe if you can talk to us a little bit more about what is business as unusual, and what will it take to make that shift? Will CSRD really be the thing that will help us make the shift?
Well, I'm going to go back to this acronym thing just for a second and say, if you're in doubt, spell it out. Because if you think about corporate responsibility in the old-fashioned way it was, you could actually outsource your problem to someone else. So offsetting, charity donations, philanthropy, this isn't really changing your own business and adopting the change that you need to make from within. So doing business as unusual in that respect is really integrating sustainability into your business and into your business decisions.
For example?
For example, it could be from anything such as where you source your glasses, where you source your water, how you are providing energy, what energy you're using. Are you using gas? Are you using electric? Are you investing in renewables? It could be about your people and how you treat your people. It could be actually as simple as making sure that the telephone number that you have so that staff can actually call in whistleblower to report on modern slavery or human trafficking, which does happen, sadly, in hotels, that phone number is actually going through to the right people who can actually make a difference.
That it's on. Yeah.
That it works. You would be surprised how many random tests we've done and found that the telephone doesn't actually get answered by anyone. Very simple things. So it's actually about assuming responsibility, looking at the way that you've been doing business and understanding that that really can change to create new prospects, new value creation, and preserve your existing value as well. You can't offset this or outsource it anymore. It's not someone else's problem. It's your problem as a business.
To add on to what you're saying, Ufi, there are new challenges that appear more and more. Climate change, the pressure on the resources can no longer be ignored. The way consumers want to consume today and tomorrow, and even in hospitality, even if you pay 300 euros to go somewhere, maybe you want a green stay or a sustainable stay, whatever it means. You want something different. And the pressure of young generations on their future employer, and just the adequation between their values, personal values, and the values of the company for which they're going to work for. And all this is something that did not exist in the CSR old-fashioned thing or sustainable development, which now exists. Call it business as unusual. It's a little bit like the new normal during the COVID time. Okay, forget about it. For me, it's more sustainable, a sustainable way of working, taking into account these new challenges, which have an impact on anything.
So Frank, maybe let's talk about this a bit more. At AccorInvest, when you do sustainability, maybe can you give us a few examples of what is business as unusual for you?
So I would say how we integrate sustainability in daily or in some of the actions. For instance, when we do an investment committee, we used to have a look at only financial KPIs. The future gross asset value, net returns, really some financial acronyms that I don't always understand. There's all these guys, asset managers, talking about things. Okay, it's done, it's above the KPI, fine. Now we have integrated sustainability score, and we estimate the future score and the existing score, and we have a target for each type, for each segment. So we look at this also. So when we do an investment, when we do a renovation, we say it's not only about the financials, it's about the other things. And in the other things, you have staff. What do we do for staff? What do we do for the building in terms of energy, carbon, accessibility, etc., etc. So it's all this. So it's not business as unusual. It's business as it should be or it must be, but it's this sustainable way of thinking. I have tons of other examples if you want, but this one is one of the key ones because it changes the mindset in the company, and it's one of the key points of this reporting thing, which is the alignment of finance and sustainability.
At AccorInvest, you also say a lot, ESG is at the core of our business. What do you mean by that? And, in the words of Ufi, I've listened, to what the EA does. Can you substantiate the claim? What hides behind that?
So sustainability is at the heart of our business. It sounds better than the ESG is at the heart of our business, to really understand it better and not having this acronym thing. But for instance, what I just said about investing, the way we invest is one thing. We have programs on food waste, for instance. So it might seem a tiny thing, but it's a lot. We have a lot of actions on energy saving, water saving, carbon saving. So this is for the asset part. We really want to reach the target of the carbon reduction scope 1 and 2, 50% by 2030. And we're doing everything which is required to reach this target. We're working hard also on our scope 3 supply chain, and this is a work we're doing with our suppliers. And we're working a lot because we have these two businesses, the real estate part and the operational part. And on the operator part, we're doing a lot on diversity, inclusion. We try to have a social impact in our hotels and take care of people who are in the hotels. There is a big staff shortage in this industry. It's not necessarily attractive jobs, although it's very interesting and there can be a very good career path. So we try to attract talents which are left completely behind.
So lots of things happening at AccorInvest, and we'll maybe question, what is the impact actually of those actions? Ufi, what do you see among other hospitality players? Like, what are the key actions in sustainability, and maybe what are the results that we're seeing?
Well, I just want to pick up on one of the points that Frank just made, because it's a really important point. And our industry for years has been trying to promote the important role it plays as an employer in terms of its impact on the global economy. And we are one of the world's biggest employers, but we are also one of the world's biggest meritocracies. In other words, you can actually join a hotel with very low, qualifications in terms of degrees, for example, and you can actually upskill within the hotel and really go out on top. And there are so many examples. Chris Nassetta of Hilton started out as a porter. He's now the CEO of one of the world's biggest hospitality companies. And it's endless, the examples of people who come in at the very bottom and who end up at the very, very top. And I think that role that our industry plays in helping society, on the S, if you want to take the acronym ESG, let's focus on the S, is outstanding. I would be very surprised if there is another industry in the world that could challenge our power to do good when it comes to the S. Now what we have to do is to sharpen our understanding of our business and actually perhaps invest in more people like Frank, engineers who have specialist knowledge to help us to excel when it comes to the environmental side. Because historically, and this is not just for hospitality, but all sectors, all industries, we've actually externalized certain costs. We have said, well, we don't have to pay for air. We don't really, water, okay, it's a utility, energy, yes. But now suddenly that's not the case anymore. So now I believe that there is a possibility that we can really excel in doing that. And then when it comes to organizations like my own, what we need to do is to be able to help to facilitate that knowledge share and help to promote that to governments around the world so they can make good use of it. Because ultimately, if AccorInvest are having such a big impact on the local community, Frank talked about giving an opportunity to people who would otherwise be left behind in society. That's a huge, significant impact. And we have to get governments to understand that and work with the industry to do that more, to do it more effectively, and make sure it's sustainable as a model for the future economy, for future generations as well.
Yeah, this is what we talk a lot, and I'm challenged on positive hospitality. Even inside the company, it doesn't mean anything.
What does it mean?
What it means to me, it's like some concepts. It means it's a great idea, but it means something, but it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. But what is to me positive hospitality? We use resources. All sorts of resources, energy, water, and even human resources. It's a resource. We use all this resource and we have negative impact. We're working on mitigating the use of these resources, energy saving, for instance, but at the end of the day, we will still be using these resources. And in balance, not saying it's comparable, we should have in front of this negative impact, a positive impact. And the positive impact for the hospitality industry is on the S. A hotel, it's a building. You can see it as the investor thing. I invest, I build a hotel, take rents, that's it. But for many people, it's something else. For you as a customer, it's the place of your first date. For me, it was the place of my first meeting with my future boss when I entered Accor. Okay, the hotel has been demolished now in Paris, but I remember that moment in the lobby of this hotel. And for people, it's maybe souvenirs because you had great holidays or your wedding. And for staff, it's maybe the place that changed their life. Come to that country, didn't speak the language, get in this place, and you speak the language and you get a degree, chef or whatever, you learn something. And as Ufi was saying, I think it's one of the rare industries in the world where you can have in one place all these different actors, the customer with souvenirs, and the staff, where you can really change their lives. And this is, I think, for me, positive hospitality is working on this very impactful subject.
And maybe let's talk about what it takes to actually quantify all these impacts, because you said, you are trying to reduce your energy consumption, water, and this and that, and you're trying to boost your social impact as much as possible. And it's true that we all have fantastic memories or very bad memories from hotels. For the third year in a row, AccorInvest has published its ESG report, even though you don't have to. And we'll put links to this report in the episode description, just so you can find it to all of those who are listening. It's not mandatory, and you're still doing it. Why? And maybe you can remind us why it is not yet mandatory for you.
It's not mandatory because we're not reporting in the frame of another acronym, NFRD, so we don't have to. So it's like this. So we are reporting. It's just a goodwill. We want to report because we want to show to the industry that we are still taking some actions. So the current report is a little bit like a NFRD, almost CSRD frame, but it's just because we need to use a framework, but it's free. And we're doing it to be ready for the day when we will have to report. And this CSRD reporting will be in 2026 on the 2025 activity. So what we need to understand is what it takes to do a reporting. Because when we will be reporting as per the CSRD framework, the data will be audited. It's not just saying that amount of kilograms waste in the hotels.
Which is not the case today.
We audit some of our KPIs because we want to be ready, mainly energy and carbon-related ones. But everything will be audited, including HR KPIs. Gender pay gap, you give something, it's audited. The hours of training, you say a number of hours, it's audited. So this takes a big change. You were talking about business as unusual. This is how the organizations put in place what is required to have this data, which is not only figures, but data auditable, reliable, consistent. And the beauty of this future reporting thing is that it's benchmarkable. We will be able to look at anybody's report in the industry, and we can compare figures. Today, when we compare our figures, it's impossible. Energy, for instance, people say by square meter, by guest room, by available room, by guest night, by whatever. You can just, impossible to compare the figures. Tomorrow it will be possible because it will be the law, the obligation.
Definitely. Maybe I'll just add to that to say, today, arguably, maybe you can still walk into a few banks as a business and say, I need to borrow some money to invest in my business. And they'll say, okay, well, what are you doing in terms of at least compliance around energy and decarbonization? And you can say, well, this is the sort of thing we're doing. And here are some green certifications or other things to show what we're doing. But that's going to change, as Frank said, because in business, you can't do a business deal on the basis of, well, maybe it's 3%. Like, you know what, it could be 7%. Oh, yeah, sure. There's no deal. And that's exactly what's happening with the sustainability issue as well. There is no room for lack of precision around, guesstimates, the best guesstimates about whether it's this or that, self-reporting. All of that basically is going to be a thing of the past. And as Frank says, we're moving into an era where it's got to be treated in the same way that you treat your financial information. That's why it's got to be audited, and your non-financial information must be assured in exactly the same way.
Yeah, it goes even to, it's the board of directors who approves. It's no longer the COMEX or the ESG team who says, here's my report, fine, okay, looks good, nice pictures. No, forget it. It goes to the board, and it's the board that take responsibility to say, okay, like the financials. So it's completely change of mindset, even to the knowledge of these guys who are sitting in the board. For financials, they are almost all financial guys, but tomorrow they will need to have this sustainability knowledge to be able to sign off the sustainability report. And to add on, you were talking about bank, access to finance tomorrow, no ESG, no money tomorrow.
That's it.
That's
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And end of story. So no sustainability, because this is the word, but no ESG, no money. And the thing you're going to that will demonstrate your sustainability will be this report. And you show this. Okay, they're doing things. They're doing it right. They have a trajectory. They're on track. They're putting capex in this to reduce that. Okay, understood. Get finance. And you even have European mechanisms like the EU taxonomy to really direct finance to green activities.
There's a really good saying by one of our members, Dr. Sabine Schaefer of ProInvest Group. She says, you mustn't question the cost of doing sustainability. You have to question the cost of not doing it. That's the reality that we are now entering. And I think she's absolutely right.
Yeah, and we even see how valuators are using sustainability criteria. So we don't understand yet how they're going to use, but they're putting in place the tools. They're putting a scorecard, saying, just estimating, what is your CREM, another acronym, where are you on your carbon roadmap, where are you on energy, where are you with your relationship with your manager, is your manager greener than this other, and there's a score. And at some stage, if it's valuators doing it, it's probably that it's going to be used in the valuation. They're not doing this for free.
But we will only get there, Frank, when companies, because AccorInvest very much is a leader in this area. We have to be very clear about that. Sadly, we have a very fragmented, very dispersed industry. By any guesstimate, 8 out of 10 businesses in our industry employ fewer than 10 people. They're very small outfits, very small hotels, or bed and breakfasts, or, whatever they may be in terms of lodging. So when you think about it on that scale, there are leaders who are emerging and showing the way. But I believe that as regulation puts more pressure on people who are investors or institutional investors and lenders, banks, insurance companies and others coming in and saying, well, hang on a second, there's some potential climate risk here. Your value of your asset might actually go down to theoretically being zero and being stranded. All these questions now coming through. What's happening is it's like a pyramid effect. It's beginning to trickle down. And that's actually by design, I believe, by the European Union, the European Green Deal. That was their design in designing EU taxonomy and all these acronyms that people get confused by, but it's working. It is trickling through. It is coming down, and it is going to start affecting more and more businesses. And as that happens and more businesses start thinking about data and reporting and doing it in a scientifically robust way, in other words, evidence it, then I believe the markets will be ready to respond. And that's where companies like AccorInvest will definitely have a clear advantage over the others, because they will have done it, they will be able to evidence it, and they'll be able to get the right value back on their investments.
The beauty of our industry, being hospitality, is that we share stuff. We welcome people. This is our business. We like people. And you were talking about this, big companies like us, and you have the owner of one hotel or two hotels, very small company. And I think that where we need to work together, and we work together, is the big companies help the small guys. Because at the end of the day, the business is not the big ones absorbing the small ones. It's a complete industry thing.
Sure, and some of those small businesses are owned by people like Richard Branson. Let's face it, right? So, you can be a successful businessman in another industry.
Or a starting one. Yeah.
And you aspire to have a hotel. And that's just the way it is in our industry. We are a very colorful industry. It reminds me of one statement that Achim Steiner made. Achim Steiner was the head of the UN many, many, many years ago, UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme. I'm talking about over 20 years ago, to show you my age. And what Achim Steiner said then, which I thought was absolutely right and still applies today, is he said the solution, the future, is actually a mosaic. It's tiny fragmented pieces, and it's a collection of all those tiny fragmented pieces. And I think he's absolutely right. And to quote Dr. Mark Lepere, who teaches on our King's program, he always says it's probably not going to be, we're going to get this 100% right. It's probably going to be more like 100 people in our team are going to get this 1% right.
Little steps for a
Little
big
steps
impact.
Collectively becoming 100%. And I think going back to Achim Stein review, decades ago when Agenda 21 first came out, that's absolutely the right way to look at this. It may be small steps, but, they will definitely pay back in a much bigger way.
And add up. And so I wanted to ask this question, but you did answer to me, is that, in order to kind of go beyond just the box ticking, there are many incentives. There are investors who are becoming more scrutinizing. There are the governments that are actually putting in place some policies to encourage everyone. There are leaders in the industry who are encouraging others also to follow suit. So now to finish perhaps and to inspire those who listen, when you think about sustainability in hospitality, what is your dream for the future of hospitality?
I have several dreams.
All right, let's start with one.
Okay, as a AccorInvest owner, I would dream to design and build a complete circular hotel based on cradle-to-cradle principles. What does that mean? Greenfield today, you build a hotel and you build it in such a way that future generations, you dismantle this thing. Every tiny piece of everything has a purpose. It's not a waste. It's a resource. And when you have dismantled everything, you're back to the greenfield.
So fully
everything that you have dismantled could be used as a school, a hospital, another hotel, whatever. That would prove that we're able in this industry to build something, a hotel, considering that there is no waste.
Well, my dream is slightly different. I take a slightly more global view. So my view is this. Given climate change, given that it's affecting a lot of countries around the world, there are many countries around the world that are already struggling with water, famine, poverty. My dream of sustainable hospitality is that everywhere around the world, everywhere, hotels and lodging businesses will be part of thriving communities. And they will be helping in an environmental, in a societal, and in a governance way. That's really my dream for sustainable hospitality. And I mean everywhere.
So the ultimate definition of positive hospitality. Thank you both. Thank you, Ufi. And thanks, Frank. Thank you for joining us on Beyond AccorInvest, the podcast where we tackle business, societal, and environmental challenges in the hospitality and real estate industries. You can listen to this podcast on almost every podcast platform in video format on YouTube. If you like it, please leave a review. And to find out more about AccorInvest, head to LinkedIn. In the meantime, dream, dare, and take care.
Don't miss another episode of Beyond AccorInvest, the podcast where we talk about our business of today, tomorrow, and beyond.